Hey guys, so last time we talked about separation trauma. We're going to be breaking it down even further. This is still chapter 1. We're talking about the manifestations of trauma. What is trauma and how does it manifest in the lives of its victims? Trauma is reality. Trauma is not an intrapsychic phenomenon, which results in neurosis. Trauma is part of the history of the victim and can affect all aspects of the victim's life thereafter. Trauma can affect victims on every level of functioning: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. Van der Kolk et al., 1996. This is what I tried to convey in my first book. It seems so obvious, and yet the unavailability of conscious recall of the event by the victims themselves has certainly contributed to many of the misperceptions about relinquishment and adoption. As we look at the ways in which trauma manifests in the lives of its victims, you can decide for yourselves if separation from mother is indeed a trauma. Trauma is an event in the life of the victim which overwhelms their ordinary human adaptations to life. Who could be more easily overwhelmed than a helpless newborn infant whose very existence was tied symbolically to that of their mother? And if an infant has no way to adapt to the sudden disappearance of its mother and its mother's self, especially when it just entered a world which no longer includes the safety of the mother's womb. So as we talked about this earlier, I think in separation trauma, that the first 3 months of a baby's life is considered the 4th trimester, and a baby only knows the mother's smell and heartbeat and voice. So it's imperative that, we do skin to skin and that there's bonding. And I'm not going to say that there aren't issues when it's still a biological mother with their baby, because of course that can happen. NICU is often recognized that there's, trauma. However, people really think that because of adoption that you can just immediately replace the birth mother with an adoptive mother, but the baby just knows it as a stranger. This new person is a stranger, so it's not easy, and it creates a trauma from that moment. All right. Where were we? Anyone except this original mother, whose rhythms and resonance the infant knows and is in tune with, is foreign and dangerous. Just as a transplant patient needs special medications to keep from rejecting the foreign organ, adoptees need special emotional responses to overcome the impulse to reject the foreign family. In her book, Trauma and Recovery, Judith Herman tells us traumatic reactions occur when action is no avail. The human system of self-defense becomes overwhelmed and disorganized. Written in 1992. The baby who cannot get their mother back, despite their cries, aka the protesting of their disappearance and beseeching of her return, is helpless, overwhelmed, thrown into chaos, and eventually goes into shock. Joseph Chilton Pearce, author of Magical Child and Evolution's End, reminds us that it takes about 45 minutes for an infant separated from their mother to go into shock. And that was written in 1992. After rage comes despair and then shock. This helplessness turns to hopelessness and a belief that the world is not safe. One cannot trust babies in incubators. May experience the same helplessness, where neither resistance nor escape is possible. Herman, 1992. While all kinds of physically and emotionally painful procedures are perpetrated upon these infants, there's nothing they can do. Defenses against any future reoccurrence of these traumas are being put into place, many of which are impossible to eradicate from the psychological and neurological symptoms. So, as we'll talk further on in the next part of this chapter, which is symptoms of traumatic response, I do talk that there are different trauma responses, and there's underdiagnosing of CPTSD for adoptees especially, and there's just a whole lot of issues when it comes to adoption in particular. Now, don't get me wrong, all these things are recognized for NICU babies, or babies who lost their, or children who lost their parents to death, right? Or maybe in foster care. But there is literally no recognition when it comes to an adoptee, especially at birth. And that is a huge problem. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Please keep tuning in. Thank you guys all for the support. Bye.